Hey there, welcome to the Path to Better A1C podcast. I am your host, Jenny Pena. I am a national board certified health and wellness coach, diabetes prevention program lifestyle coach, and I am super excited about a guest that I have today. I know that many of you are going to benefit from all the knowledge. I've been following him on Instagram and I learned so much every single day. He has amazing content, and what I love the most is that it's science based. And is Andy the RD? I'm going to let him introduce himself and share a little bit about what he does and what is his mission and vision in terms of health and wellness.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Jenny, and I'm so happy to hear that you find that you learn from me like maybe every day, almost every day. That makes me, that's why I'm in it, right? I think the most important thing to know about me is I do get like a great deal of joy learning new things in the realm of food and nutrition, sharing that information and just sharing it to the benefit of as many people as possible. And yeah, for me, I'm a registered dietitian from Toronto, Canada. And I don't know if you know this, but my first job, and now I have a private practice now. My first job was working for Diabetes Canada in the research and education department. So I do have a bit of a special connection with diabetes management. And at this point in my career, when I'm focusing more on fatty liver, and I've always been in the realm of metabolic health, and which basically talk about cholesterol management, blood sugar management, improving blood work, maybe some weight management. I've always been in that realm, but I've focused more on fatty liver recently. But the fact of the matter is that blood sugar management and diabetes prevention or diabetes management, they are really heavily tied in with fatty liver. So it's kind of like in a way, it's a bit of a full circle thing. And
Mhm.
obviously, I'm here today talking with you, and I'm really excited for it. But yeah,
Awesome.
beyond that, I used to do a lot of writing. I have a bunch of books. These days, it's more just walking videos, as we talked about before, and social media content. But that's my little introduction.
Yeah, I think like that was one of the first I direct message him because if you follow him, and please go follow him, is Andy the RD. Um, when you follow him, a lot of the videos he does it while he's walking. And in my mind, I'm like, I wonder how many steps he actually gets every day because that's something that a lot of people, there are different theories about what is the ideal step number
Sure.
that you should get. Or again, if we're in the northern hemisphere and it's getting colder and now like your step count kind of suffers a little bit with all the jobs sitting down for long periods of time, sometimes mobility suffers a bit. But that was something funny that I said that I'm like, well, with all those videos while you're walking, you probably have a good step count. But yeah, yeah, awesome.
Yeah, it's funny because I never really cared about step count for a long time, and then there's a period in my career where I was super busy and like, unhealthily busy, right? We're talking about good busy, where I was like, oh, I'm getting 2,000 steps a day. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. It's like a sign that I'm like so busy and I'm like working so hard. And then later on, I realized like that was kind of a silly way to look at it, and I had a period out of nowhere. I'm like, let me start making these walking videos because it seems more authentic. Because I was doing a lot of videos sitting in my office, and I think people kind of like more just the walking, the authenticity, the more natural
Mhm.
aspect of it. And yeah, I just kind of stuck with that. My step count literally started going up, and I started walking a bit to work, and then all of a sudden, I got 10,000 steps. But you bring up a good point because so there's new research. I love talking about walking because in the current day and age, there's conflict about almost every topic, but I think it's kind of easy to come to agreement on the fact that it's good to walk, right? More
Yep.
more than you did before. Yeah, there's new research saying like a lot of the benefits for walking come in the first 7,000 steps, which basically means obviously 10,000 is better than 7,000 if you can get it, but you don't need to feel bad if 10,000 is beyond you, and just to know that the difference between 2,000 and 7,000 steps to your health is quite big. And what they call exercise snacks, which is getting up for 2-minute walk every 30 minutes. Like if you do that consistently, that will change how your blood sugar responds at a meal.
Mhm.
So walking has a lot of value in different ways. Not to mention walking after a meal. Like walking seems like a simple thing, but actually there's so much there. So that's why I love talking about it.
Well, to my listeners, I keep saying that because a lot of people think that for exercise to count, it has to be at the gym, it has to be 2 hours, it has to be high intensity. And if you squeeze those 10-minute walks, especially after the meals, like your blood sugar response is going to be different. Your insulin sensitivity is going to get better. So
Yep.
include that. And sometimes I tell them, I'm like, if you cannot go outside, you can march in place. You can march in place
Mhm.
while you're in a meeting. You can, if you're at home and you have kids, after dinner, put a playlist and start dancing. I mean, be goofy a little bit, but
Yeah,
get that movement
absolutely.
so they get your heart rate elevated. And that actually gives a lot of benefits. So I'm glad that an expert agrees with me on that.
100%. No, you're right. And everything you said is great. I agree with all of that.
Now, let's talk about fatty liver because
Mhm.
I know it seems that it's interconnected with diabetes. What causes what, or what comes first? And what can someone diabetic and now they're seeing these signs, like what can they actually like be mindful of and look into?
Yeah. So there's a few layers there. I think, first of all, it is more likely that someone gets a fatty liver diagnosis first and then a diabetes diagnosis later. But it's not impossible that the reverse is true, that someone has pre or type 2 and then ends up with a fatty liver diagnosis. There's a lot of factors there. It depends, like, are they getting imaging? What blood work are they looking at? How observant is their medical team, and so on. But what we know is that if someone has type 2 diabetes, if someone has a fatty liver, their chance of ending up with type 2 in the next 5 years is about twice as high as someone who doesn't
Wow.
have fatty liver. And that's because it's heavily tied in with insulin resistance. The liver storing a little bit of fat, and it is a very small amount. So it's really important to say that, because the liver is only around 3.5 pounds, and only
Okay.
like 0.2, 0.3 pounds of that has to be fat. So we're not talking a mound of fat. It's a very small amount that ends up there because systems internally are just not working as well as they should. So it's almost like that. And that's one of the reasons I do like working in fatty liver, is because it's like, hey, listen, your liver's telling you that maybe you haven't been doing things right. So now you have this opportunity to change your trajectory, right? And that's another reason that I'm really into this area. It's because it compels people, because people, when they hear the liver's not right, it's like, oh, okay, that's not good. But you can totally change your trajectory after hearing that news. That's part of it. That's a big part of it.
Is there anything in terms of a lifestyle that can cause or increase your chances of developing fatty liver? Because I know with diabetes, a lot of people have the misconception, oh, it's because I eat a lot of sugar, right? And there are a lot of other components. It's not just that. Is there something like that people will be like, if you keep doing this certain lifestyle habits, there is a chance of a higher risk of developing fatty liver?
So I'm going to answer that a few ways. First of all, there is actually evidence the health of the gut microbiome and the health of the liver are really connected. Okay. So what's really interesting is when you look at the research, what they find is that in people who are in good metabolic health, so they don't have any issues, but they have a history of antibiotic use, they have about a 30+% higher chance of ending up with a fatty liver. So you could be in good metabolic health with a history of repeated antibiotic use. That increases your fatty liver risk, because after blood flows through the digestive system, it goes to the liver next. And if your gut microbiome has taken a lot of hits, and you know, maybe you haven't used antibiotics exactly as directed. Maybe you didn't take a supporting probiotic during that period of time to minimize the disruption. Maybe your diet generally is not thoughtful of the parts that increase the health of the gut microbiome, right? So that actually is a subset of people that can end up with it. There are genetic factors too. And then we can talk about fructose. Like, obviously, there's always interest around high fructose corn syrup, okay? And it is true in very large amounts. Like, so we're talking over 100 grams a day, which is 3 cans of soda, 3 cans of pop, basically I would say over a liter a day. That amount consistently can increase liver fat content because of the way fructose is metabolized in the
Mhm.
liver and how fructose affects the gut microbiome and so on. But the easy way to put it, it basically just means that things haven't quite been right from the movement front. So probably relatively sedentary, not overly active. And they haven't quite been right from the diet front, which means there could be gaps in omega-3 intake, or in fiber intake, or in, polyphenol intake. And maybe certain foods have been, really high calorie foods have been overrepresented. So it just kind of means that something's not quite right in totality with what someone's doing. I never really try and peg it on, oh, it's because of pop. Because the reality is, you drink 3 pops a day, but the rest of what you do is high level, you're not ending up with fatty liver. I think, so I think that's also true.
Interesting. So you see how like a lot of these habits and also again a lot of foods that are processed, like the added sugar that sometimes sneaks in, and all those things, they end up always impacting one of the systems. But if somebody comes to you with my labs are showing a little bit of like, okay, the indication that there is like fatty liver disease, what are like three things that you would recommend? Watch these three things.
Okay, so watch these three things in terms of food, and not talking about like other stuff, just food only.
If you want to focus on food, absolutely. I know a lot of people think about food, and I know that even with illnesses, food is important, but it's not like the
Mhm.
only element, even with diabetes. But sure,
Yeah.
let's talk about food.
Yeah. I mean, I think the obvious thing is, I would say, look, if you're drinking a large amount of soda, pop, whatever, it's different. It's called different in the States and Canada. Like we're talking like a liter a day or more, probably switch that to diet soda, right? I think
Mm,
that's a change you can make. And there was a study recently where they looked at either having 10% more calories from sugar or 10% less calories, and the sweetness was replaced by various artificial sweeteners or alternative sweeteners. Okay. And then they measured the effect on the gut bacteria, and they found actually the extra calories and the extra sugar had more of a more negative effect. So it's not necessarily so straightforward that diet drinks equal bad for the gut bacteria. I think that's not necessarily very clear that that's the
interesting.
case. So I would say if someone's drinking a large amount of pop, making that switch makes sense. Um, the next thing you want to be aware of realistically is saturated fat. In studies where they look at how different types of fat affect how much fat ends up in the liver, saturated fat always ends up. And saturated fat basically is, the butter, the red meat, the high fat dairy products of the world, right? And that's not to say that that someone can't have this stuff, but if you have a fatty liver diagnosis and you're cooking with butter instead of olive oil, I mean, you're going against a lot of good evidence, right? Now, if you're willing to make other changes elsewhere, great. You can use whatever, cook with whatever you want. But if you need all the wins you can get, you need to orient away from saturated fat to whatever extent your happiness will allow. So that what does that actually mean? It means probably more fish, less red
Mhm.
meat if you're an omnivore, right? It means more olive oil, less butter.
Hmm.
Maybe the 1% dairy products instead of the 3%. That's what, there's no question in my mind based on all the studies I've seen that will help to lower your liver fat content. So I would say that as well. And then we talk insulin resistance, right? We have to talk about like very, very, high glycemic index carbohydrates that anything where the first ingredient is white flour, something that's really boosting, like something that's significantly boosting the influence of meals on your blood sugar levels or of snacks on your blood sugar levels. Those we have to be mindful of things like that, right? Now, there's a lot of tricks that we can employ though to because an individual can, like, let's say, love white rice, and we could also say in the same breath, yeah,
I
no,
love
I
white
use white
rice.
rice.
I'm Hispanic and I love white rice. And I'm so glad that it doesn't spike my blood sugar as much
Yeah,
as mashed potatoes.
I bring up white rice specifically because it's probably that one thing that, like, in so many cultures and so many people, it's well loved. So let's actually springboard from the avoidance conversation to the strategy and the science conversation, right? So let's say you love white rice, but then you're aware of blood sugar regulation issues and insulin resistance. Well, you have so many strategies that you can employ. So first of all, if you mix white rice 50-50 with beans, now I think eating more beans is the number one step to take if you want to just pick one positive step, because beans do two things. In the short term, they make you more full after a meal and they reduce your post-meal blood sugar response. So you mix beans 50-50 with rice, that alone is going to reduce the effect of the rice on your blood sugar by 20-30%. Okay? It's going to make you more full, which is amazing. But in the long term, it's going to boost your healthy gut bacteria, which is going to have a carryover effect on your liver in the longer term. Because beans are one of the foods that are most influential on the healthy gut bacteria because of not only the high fiber content, but the unique type of fiber that they have. So that's one thing you can do right away. You can also eat the white rice at a meal last. Now, that's not always appealing for everyone. I call it the food order trick. It's a well-known concept in the world of diabetes management. But if you have a meal, rice, chicken, and broccoli, if you eat the rice last instead of first, let's just say, it's a totally different blood sugar response. So you mix it with beans. You potentially have it last in a meal. You take a walk right after your meal. That's going to lower your blood sugar, your peak, right? You eat more slowly. And all of a sudden, you're carrying that white rice in your diet without any significant cost to your insulin resistance and your blood sugar regulation, right? So that's good. I'm going to hand it back to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, as being a Hispanic, you describe what I had to do because there is no way in the world that I am going to go
Yep.
without rice and beans. And I mean, I grew up eating that every day. But one thing that a lot of my clients also come with is maybe for you is pasta, maybe for you is
Mhm.
mashed potatoes. Like if you're from the U.S. in the South, like it's all about the potatoes and like a lot of the fried stuff. And sometimes you have to figure out ways of, is it the crispiness that you like? Can you maybe cook it in the air fryer instead of being deep fried? Like, can you use
Mhm.
avocado oil instead? And swap things so that you can still enjoy the food that you are eating and still incorporate things that maybe you grew up in and sometimes have like an emotional tie to it, but yet you can support your health. I grew up eating rice every day. I don't eat
Mhm.
it every day. For me, more it's a more of a celebratory food, but I make sure that whenever I eat it, I have protein, I have the beans. I am going to move after. Typically
Mhm.
don't like to eat it towards the end of the day and then like veg out by the couch. But I do it just to prevent that spike. And there are certain things that spike me the most. Thanksgiving is coming, and I know that mashed potatoes, it
Right.
seems like no matter what I do, I get that slight headache, and I know that my blood sugar is elevated the moment that I eat it. But I'm aware of it, and I just adapt and do the best that I can and enjoy them when I have them. But yeah, this is great
Yeah.
stuff. Awesome.
No, you covered. So let's well, let's talk about some of the points you cover because nutrition is definitely a game of to each their own. Where if someone could easily come to me and say that okay, Andy, hey, I want to reverse fatty liver, I want to lower my A1C, but I'm gonna eat white rice every day. So that's totally doable. Or I'm gonna eat pasta, right? So now there's layers here because you made some interesting points about in your case you have white rice a little bit less often and so on, and you apply like a trick where you manipulate the food order.
Hmm.
So what I would tell people is that the more often that you let's say have something like white rice, okay, or pasta, and the more important it is for you to manage like insulin and resistance and blood sugar, you could argue that yeah, using the trick where you have the starch last is going to be quite valuable because it's behavior you do often. But it's not like to say every single time or if the meals mixed together that you have to sweat it, like it has to be done. So it's a fine line between saying, hey, this is science, this will help, but you don't have to do this all the time. And it's not like it's going to be a disaster if you don't. Now, for the pasta argument, we can apply the same thing. Like, if someone was really concerned about topics in this realm and their post meal blood sugar response, start that you can have a salad first, then have your pasta with a protein. Protein, obviously, at the meal is going to play a big role
Hmm.
in slowing down the blood sugar response. So, if it's pasta with chicken or if it's pasta with beans, if someone's a vegan or a vegetarian, you eat the salad first, maybe then have the pasta with the protein together. That's a totally different ball game than having pasta alone first and then going having the rest of the meal. Totally different ball game. And
Yeah.
in one instance, it's easy to say it doesn't matter much, which I agree with. But if this is kind of a big part of someone's life, then you want to be aware of these things and you want to
Hmm.
use them to your advantage as much as possible.
Yep. Yep. And I usually tell just don't eat carbs naked.
Right.
Kind of like
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
them. Like if there's one thing, I'm like, if you're having insulin resistance, pre-diabetes, and that was actually the first advice that I got from like a really good doctor. She actually helped me reverse it and maintain it.
Yeah.
Um, and she said, like, whatever you do, it doesn't matter if it's complex carb, even if it is a fruit, like just eat it with either some sort of healthy fat or protein. Like your body's gonna respond differently. And to this day, I try to abide by that. So, as tempting as it can be to get that fresh bread and just eat it, it's like, okay, like I know what's going to happen if I don't have something else with that.
It's good. It's good advice. Also has a secondary effect. So as the intended effect, carbohydrates alone are going to cause a bigger increase in blood sugar than carbohydrates paired with something else. So that's 100% true. The secondary effect is it actually forces someone, leads someone to learn. Okay, maybe certain foods have like a synergy together, or you're going
Hmm.
to pursue a more diverse diet because okay, well I'm having a carb already. Well, I have to have a protein or a fat, and maybe those foods were less forthcoming in someone's diet, right?
Hmm.
So I think also as I think about the consequences of that guidance, it's obviously good guidance. It actually also has an additional bonus effect, which is you seek out other foods that offer nutritional value, and you have the higher potential to make some meals and snacks that really are really robust nutritionally and offer you a bunch of different benefits, right? So that's also cool.
Okay. I have two more questions before we wrap up. But
Yeah.
what is your take on the type of oils? Because I know that there's a lot of things about seed oils and inflammation and all of these things. Like Mediterranean diet seem to be like the one that has like the most research out there, right? Like olive
Mhm.
oil and olives and nuts. But what is your take on that? Because I know you mentioned saturated fat, but what about the oils, like the cooking oils?
Yeah, I think that when we think about the type of fat and what we really want is like monounsaturated fat, which is what's found in like nuts and olives and avocado, and what people aren't necessarily getting a lot in their diet. Like that's going to come in the highest supply in olive oil and avocado oil. And olive oil also is very high. And by the way, here's a fun fact. So monounsaturated fat, aka olive oil, it actually stimulates a greater GLP-1 release than butter, saturated fat. GLP-1, obviously it's popularized in the medical realm, but it's a real thing our body releases.
Mhm.
It slows down how food moves through our system and makes us more sensitive to insulin. So just so everyone knows that olive oil, and there's clear evidence on this from good journals that olive oil stimulates a greater release. So I would say like the easy choice is, and also olive oil has polyphenols, and we also have really good evidence that when polyphenol intake, and polyphenol is just a family of antioxidants that are good for the gut microbiome. They have positive influence on inflammation. Higher polyphenol diets lead to better outcomes for liver health. So when olive oil can give you monounsaturated fats and polyphenols, which the average person is low in both in their diet. The average person, if we pluck someone off the street, what are they going to be lower in? Is it going to be saturated fat, or is it going to be olive oil, or is it going to be monounsaturated fat and polyphenols? We know what they're going to be low in statistically. So I think olive oil or maybe avocado oil is the easy choice. But if we want to be more broad about it, and let's say economics come into the picture, maybe in the grander scheme, someone can't have the type of diet they want. And if, let's say they can't afford to have olive oil or avocado because it's more pricey, I wouldn't think twice about using something like sunflower oil, which is very high in vitamin E. And vitamin E is actually very protective of the liver. A lot of good evidence on that, right? The polyunsaturated fats, which are higher in sunflower oil. And the irony is, sorry, I'm kind of rambling here. The irony is there's also high oleic sunflower oil, which means like it's high in monounsaturated fats. I don't want anyone who maybe economically can't have olive oil to feel bad about eating sunflower oil, because really the reality is what oil you use, if you're willing to do a lot of other things right, the oil you use is almost irrelevant. The relevance of the oil you use goes down as the quality of your diet and lifestyle goes up. Now, that's true for many things. I could say the same with the food order trick. The value of the food order trick goes down as your lifestyle and dietary habits go up. It's inevitable, because that means you're probably going to be eating beans and salmon and asparagus. It's a lot of smoke and mirrors. I know it's big on social media, but if you I think the biggest unintended consequence of it is, one of my favorite snacks to recommend are like roasted beans, roasted lentils, roasted chickpeas, because it's a satiating snack, high protein, high fiber. If you're gonna eat any carb naked, beans are the one, because they really are very unique. They really are different than any other source of carbohydrates. So if that was cooked with sunflower oil, because that's economical and drives the price down, it would be a shame if someone chose something else instead because they think sunflower is bad. Because the sunflower oil is going to have no negative consequences in that context. And again, studies show when it comes to liver fat levels that saturated fat in large amounts drives liver fat more than anything else, right? So if you're thinking about liver fat content, then it is what it is.
Okay. And the other question I had is resistant starch. Because
Mhm.
there was a lot of things, and I'm like, is there like true science behind, oh, if I cook the rice today and I heat it up tomorrow, or the potatoes, does it have a difference in terms of the impact on your blood sugars, or nah?
Yeah. So resistant starch is let's just think of it as it's essentially like a type of fiber for the sake of simplicity. And it's a type of fiber that has a above average effect on the gut bacteria, which means that not every type of fiber is going to boost levels of healthy gut bacteria in the same way. Resistant starch has a much higher potential than maybe certain other types of fiber. Okay. And resistant starch, guess what resistant starch is in? Well, it's in a lot of beans, which is one of the reasons why they're so good for the gut bacteria. It's also in greenish bananas. Greenish bananas are the highest source, right? So
Interesting.
conventional wisdom is like, oh, bananas are bad, spike blood sugar. But a greenish banana is going to be lower in glycemic index, higher in resistant starch, good for your gut bacteria. Sure, pair it with fat, have it with a tablespoon of peanut butter and a cup of milk or soy milk. That's an epic snack. And to say bananas are bad is only showing a surface level understanding of like what's going on with food. But resistant starch basically just accumulates when you cook and cool a potato, a rice, or a pasta, and it does accumulate, essentially increases the fiber content overnight, and it will have a lesser effect on your blood sugar levels the next day. So having leftover potato, rice, or pasta is better for blood sugar and gut microbiome health, and as a consequence, better for liver health. Like how much does it matter in the grand scheme? It depends on what else you're doing and how much you're relying on that food to be a champion in your diet. So it could be completely irrelevant or it could be the best thing that you're able to do in this moment and very important. It all depends
Mhm.
on the person.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to throw a few random questions just to
Mhm.
see. Okay. What is that vegetable that you will not eat?
You know what? It's so funny because I had some friends over last night after playing soccer, and I cooked my friend eggplant. He had me try it. I can't do it. I just don't like the mouth feel. No, just eggplant. Eggplant is not for me. Zucchini, on the other hand, no problem. I think for me, I'm a very like mouth feel texture person. So fresh blueberries, no. Frozen blueberries, yes. Tomato sauce, yes. But tomatoes, like to bite into something and then it's mushy on the inside, I can't do it. Yeah, I struggle with that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Favorite snack when you hit that 3 p.m. slump?
It has to be some combination of fruit and nuts and dark chocolate. So I don't know, a bag of tangerines, a bag of pecans, a couple squares of dark chocolate, or it could be apples and a different type of nut and dark chocolate. Fruit, nuts, and dark chocolate for me. If I have more time, if I'm really strapped for time, honestly, I love roasted edamame snacks. Those would be my two. And I
Yeah.
recommend a lot of those to my clients too, not because I like them, but because they just fill in gaps in the average person's diet that I know are going to change their life. That's it, right?
Yeah, yeah. What is your guilty pleasure? What is that food or thing that you do that you're like, ah, it may not be
Yeah, I mean,
100% good, but I'm still gonna do it.
yeah, I mean, okay, like, I'm gonna translate that question into, okay, Andy, what foods do you like that are not like considered traditionally nutritious? So
Mhm.
chips would be one, French fries would be one, hamburgers for sure. Ice cream cake, but I mean, really, that doesn't really. I mean, who doesn't really, right? Like ice cream cake, I think. Those would be, yeah, ice cream cake, chips. Chips I eat very often. French fries. I think those would be some of the ones that play a big role.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Any last suggestions for those that have diabetes or pre-diabetes or already is showing fatty liver disease signs or having talks with the doctors, something that they can grab at the end of the episode that you would want to share?
Yeah. So I'll just say a few things because I always have a few things to say. I like to talk, like I told you before. It's like don't underestimate walking. Okay, that's number one. Not everybody. I mean, and look, I encourage people to aim high with physical activity and learn a new skill, and that's great. But if you don't have a robust background in physical activity, it's not easy to go just jump into doing some difficult class. I appreciate that. So don't underestimate walking. Number one, walking right after a meal, walking 150 minutes a week, just getting up, because walking is not just walking. Walking also means you're not sitting.
Hmm.
So it's a
Absolutely.
double win. So that's really important to know. So do not underestimate the power of walking. Like studies show if you walk 150 minutes a week, your chance of reversing fatty liver, all else equal, is 3 to 4 times higher than someone who doesn't do that, just from that change alone. So that's
Wow,
massive. So
that's
don't
amazing.
underestimate that. Do not underestimate that. I mean, don't underestimate the power of eating slowly and mindfully, taking a few deep breaths before a meal, not rushing a meal. That will totally change your appetite hormone release and your blood sugar response. And I know a lot of people, they do try and rush their meals. They don't kind of protect mealtime to the best of your ability. I would recommend that. I would also have to say, look, like I'm a bit biased here, but if you have any a potential or budget at all to speak with a dietitian, I highly recommend it because there's so much information out there. And if somebody could figure out nutrition for themselves, it's true, but you're risking a very long and convoluted path and a lot of unnecessary suffering. And I always tell my clients, my job I say this, okay? To master nutrition is a multi-year endeavor. My job is to condense the timeline and make it as painless as possible. Whether you do it alone or with someone's help, it's going to be a multi-year endeavor because there's lessons you have to learn, trials and tribulations that you have to go through. There's no magic quote that's going to take away that you have to learn and reflect and observe, right? And try things, see what works for you, see how you respond to different situations, go through a tough period, see how you're able to recuperate and recover from that. So there's all of that tied in. So I would say that as well. Eat more beans. I think beans are the most underappreciated family of foods. When we look at the people who live long and like the areas of the world people live the longest, they always eat beans. Like there's a study for a woman from Spain. She lived 117, and they said she had a gut microbiome of someone decades younger than her, right? And that doesn't mean that, and she had a Mediterranean diet, which means beans are involved. Doesn't mean that that's everything and that explains her longevity. But if we know this one food is underconsumed, it's economical, it makes you full, You don't have to have that much of it to feel full. It's good for your gut bacteria. We see the gut bacteria associate so much with longevity. You know, it's like where there's smoke, there's fire sometimes.
It's a no-brainer. It's almost like, come on,
Yeah.
like jump in the wagon. A lot of people are, and that's the one thing. I'm proud to be Hispanic and I'm proud that I know how to cook the beans from scratch.
Mhm.
But a lot of people are afraid of like, oh, it's gonna get me gassy or it's gonna there are
Mhm.
tricks for that. And sometimes I do
Yeah.
share that. Like there are tricks for
Yeah.
that. There's a science behind it, how you prepped it so that you don't get those side effects. And a lot of times too is because I know that definitely in America, like the average intake of fiber is about like 10 grams or less
Yeah.
and that is way below like the guideline. So when you're trying to add all these fiber, also the body, I'm not used to all this fiber. So sometimes even incorporating that, you got to do it slowly. But there are tricks for that. So don't be afraid of the beans, please. If you need to message
100%.
me, if you want the tricks, I will share the tricks. As somebody that
That's
grew
important.
up with rice and beans all the time, and I never had an issue. I'm like, okay, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, in our countries eat heavily on beans, and you don't hear that.
It's really important. It's true. It's true. People believe that they can't eat them without. I mean, and like let's put it out there. I mean, I think canned lentils are one of the better tolerated ones of all the beans in terms of like being a little bit lower in FODMAPs. Which
Mhm.
anyway, just to mean like start with canned lentils if you really are unconfident, and start with a low amount. Start with like a quarter cup. Okay. There are actually studies that quarter cup of lentils a day actually is enough to reduce insulin resistance, right? So it's not like you have to go and have a can of beans every day. You know, get canned, start with canned lentils, start with a small amount. Maybe don't have it at a meal that's otherwise already high in fiber from other foods. That's just some quick tips right off the top that you could use. And then the only other thing, Jenny, which we talked about before we started recording is, and I'm sure to put this in the show notes. I do have that online course for fatty liver, and
Mhm.
I'm gonna give you that 50% off code. It's PB50. That's gonna be all in the description, so it's all good. But for anyone
Yep.
out there who wants to like learn more about fatty liver and how and my philosophy to reverse it, but maybe it's not in a position to, you know, go into advanced coaching on that topic. So I'll throw that out there too.
Thank you so much. That's amazing. That's very generous of you. And is there any other place that you would like for them to connect with you? As you said, I will put all the information on the show
Mhm.
notes. But is there any last thing we would like to share?
Instagram is great, you know, 'cause to your point at the beginning, you find that you learn a lot, and you already know a lot, right? So I would say that if if an individual who doesn't have your same level of knowledge, maybe they're gonna learn twice as much. So,
Yeah.
Instagram it is.
Yeah. I all my clients, any clients that I hear that I work with or anyone that comes in contact and they talk about like fatty liver, I kind of pointed it to you just because again the content is solid, is science based. There's a lot of things out there. A lot of my clients sometimes they go on forums and they go on these groups and a lot of people that run these groups sometimes they have a hidden agenda. It's not always science based. Sometimes they're promoting even supplements or certain
Mhm.
extreme diets and it's not safe. So contact the dietitian, make sure that you enroll with a dietitian or make sure that the information that you get is science based, that is backed by science and that there is some evidence behind it and not just some sort of trend that we know and we're familiar about.
Yeah, and you make an important point. If we just like you talk about forums and like, look, going and reading people's stories, it's definitely powerful. But it's true, like when you work with, let's say, a dietitian or any sort of practitioner that looks at large amounts of scientific evidence, then like what they're doing essentially is they are rapidly combining everyone's story together and giving you the most likely advice that's going to be successful. So when you just look at one person's story, the chance that that story is going to come true for you is not very high. But when you get feedback from someone who is constantly looking at everyone's story, there's a higher percentage chance that you're going to get the advice that's going to work, right? So you got to be really careful and be really mindful when you take in people's stories and anecdotes. Like understand their value for what it is. Maybe it's motivating, but be really careful because would you rather do something that worked for one person or something that worked for 1,000 people?
Hmm.
Like which one, if
Yep.
you had to bank everything on it, what would you rather do? I think that's maybe a really important message and something I take for granted because, the more I learn, I get more and more removed from, let's say, the person in my chair. So I have to be very careful. And I appreciate you bringing up that point. I have to come back down to earth and like realize, okay, there's science, but there's also real life. And like we have to find the middle ground. Right.
Hmm.
So that's very important.
Thank you so much, Andy, for your time. I appreciate
My
all the
pleasure.
knowledge. I am sure that the audience appreciates you as well. Thank you so much for the discount. So if anybody has fatty liver disease and you need something, um, to get started. 50% off is actually a pretty generous discount. So we appreciate that. And hopefully I'll
My
get
pleasure.
to have you again and maybe we can talk a little bit more.
Yeah, you can see, like I said it already today. I like to talk, so I'll definitely come back if you want me to. Thank
Thank you so much. Have an amazing rest of your week.
you too.